Hi, I'm Rebecca, and this is D2C Live on Air. We're diving deep into the stories behind some of your favourite brands, from candid chats with founders to insights from top marketers and e-com operators. We're going to discover how they're building, scaling, and learning in this ever-evolving D2C landscape. And I'm really excited to introduce my guest for today, Mark from SURI. If you could give a little welcome, like who you are, where you work, and what you do.
Hi guys, so my name's Mark. I'm one of the co-founders of SURI along with Give, and I'm calling here, this looks like a fake background, but I'm actually working from New England, so I'm in the mountains of New Hampshire at the moment. SURI is short for Sustainable Rituals. We make a electric toothbrush which uses more sustainable materials. We offer free recycling, and we set up in May 22, and we've been growing quite quickly since then. Largely because a lot of people brush their teeth and we make a better product than others.
That's true. A lot of people do brush their teeth, don't they? So what kind of where did the idea come from? How did it come about?
Sure. So both Keith and I started our careers at Procter and Gamble. I was in sales and strategy roles, ultimately managing Pringles when it was acquired by Kellogg's, and Guy was working in finance and marketing roles in the Geneva office, managing Venus razors, which was part of Gillette. And then sort of we met and we were discussing how we felt that fast-moving consumer goods, obviously, everyone uses those products on a daily basis. But what we saw was that we were selling millions and billions of units, but there were sort of maybe lots of excess packaging and plastic, and especially with electric toothbrushes, things that couldn't be recycled fully. So it just felt like, what if we could do something that was impactful and brought a better experience to this enormous category? And that was the sort of basis of the idea.
And what was there anything that made you settle into teeth and dental hygiene in particular, or was it just
Yeah.
kind of a gap in the market that you saw?
So there's a few things. So we were looking at categories and doing research, and we found out that every year over 4 billion brushes get thrown away and end up in landfill and ocean. In fact, Rebecca, probably virtually every brush you ever used since you were a child still exists somewhere and will do for a long time because of the materials they're made out of. So there's this enormous sort of sustainability issue that people don't kind of really even think about necessarily versus, say, something like plastic straws. So on one hand, there was that issue, but then we researched with thousands of people using like SurveyMonkey and various different ways of interviewing people, whether that's consumers or dental professionals, and we discovered a few things. One, virtually no one uses the Bluetooth function on their toothbrush, but everyone complained that the batteries, wouldn't last more than a few days or a week, which is really frustrating. People told us they were bulky and loud, so they didn't necessarily take them when they went traveling, and would bring a manual brush instead, adding to the plastic waste. And then beyond that as well, I don't know if you've ever had that gunk that forms on the bottom, that crusty, horrible stuff. Everyone hated that. And so we're like, well, there seems to be an issue here, not just in sustainability, but actually in the product experience. And so what if we can make a brush that's both more sustainable, but also more enjoyable to use, with features like a long-lasting battery or a magnetic mirror mount, so that you don't get that crust, that's slim, that's light, that's quiet. And if we could do that, maybe consumers would actually be able to sort of think about their morning and evening routine, not as a chore, but as a true pleasure, doing something that they feel is both good for themselves and for the planet. So that was like the sort of the stem of the idea. But then when you look into it, I mean, I know it sounds really basic, but a lot of people do brush their teeth. It's an absolutely enormous category, and it doesn't matter whether you're 5 years old or 95 years old. It doesn't matter whether you live in the UK or Japan or Australia or anywhere. It's an enormous category. And so we felt, what if we can make a superior product in an enormous category that's growing, then you have this opportunity to build a meaningful business.
And how long did you spend in that research phase? Because I think it's quite exciting, isn't it? Obviously, as you've figured this idea out, you want to get going on it. You probably start looking into suppliers and all. How do you not get too ahead of yourself and really absorb all of the information to make those critical decisions early on?
Totally. So look, this is the absolute genius of my co-founder Guy. Like it was his idea, his insights, and I think he'd spent a few months sort of researching it, looking at the category, buying category data, and then after he'd sort of pulled together this concept, he shared the idea with me and said, "Look, Mark, what do you think? I'd love you to join. I've got some information I can send you." And I was like, "Oh, maybe." And then he sent me this document, and it was the most comprehensive research I think I'd ever seen. It was just so compelling, and I could see this was going to be a big opportunity if we could execute on it. And so, I think from initial idea through research into development of the first product was about 9 months.
Okay, that's not too crazy. It's like, but it seems like you've done like a lot of background prior to that stage.
I think I think we drew on our experience from P&G. It's very like category led. So you start with like, what's the total size of the category? How is that segmented by geography? How is that segmented by like retail partner? What's the expected growth rate from it? What's happened before, etc. And then you can just see the absolute enormity of the size of the market. I think if I was to do this all again and set up a business, one of the things that's important is looking at your total addressable market size. And you could make the absolute best I don't know house for bees. I don't know what you call that, but like it would be difficult to grow that to a huge business because the
Mm.
market might be really small. And yeah,
I think that can be a
so
problem when people start like passion, when they sometimes start from a passion that they've got themselves. Like, I don't think that market category size necessarily comes into it straight away for people. And that might be a challenge as people are starting to grow and develop into the products and start marketing. Then they'd
yeah.
realize it's something that they probably should have looked into a little bit more.
Totally. Well, and it depends what you want, like what's your outcome. So I think, recently Wild sold to Unilever in a deal worth a couple of $100 million. And, you look at that category and it's absolutely enormous. And so there's a big opportunity there to really build like something that's absolutely huge, even if you can take a small share of that market.
And was there any like big challenges that you came across, like when you were trying to do something different in such like a traditional like category?
It's constant challenge. I think anyone, and you'll know, owning not one but two businesses, Rebecca, like it's, something will be going well, then something will be challenging. And so it's not a matter of, were there any challenges, like every day, every week, every month is like seemingly a new one. But we just really focused on trying to nail the fundamentals. And for us, the fundamentals are around delivering a great consumer experience. We have a 4.8 out of 5 rating on Trustpilot with over 11,500 reviews. And that really speaks to the fact that, we put a lot of care and dedication into delivering something great for our customers.
And how do you handle things like retention with your customers? Like, what's like the life cycle of the product, and how do you keep them engaged to keep coming back?
So the great thing about an electric toothbrush is it's almost like got a retention model built in. I don't know if you try brushing your teeth without having one of the heads on the top, it's a very negative experience. Just obviously like with the metal, and so you need to keep buying replacement heads in order for it to be effective. And so to an extent, you have retention sort of built into the fact that the products and you need to replace the heads in order to get like a really thorough clean. So actually, what brush do you use?
I use a bamboo non-electric toothbrush. I didn't like the commitment of charging.
Right, because the charge always runs out, and you have to use a specialist charger. Sounds like you need a SURI because we
It
solved
does.
both of those issues. Yeah.
But that's also like a really lame excuse because I also have an electric car which I have to charge to drive.
Well, there you go. There you go. So, like you're our ideal customer. We'll have to
Yeah.
convert you. Why haven't you bought a SURI yet?
I don't know. I actually bought one as a gift for someone at Christmas, so I did because I
Ah,
love the branding and I love the
yeah.
packaging. So maybe I just need to invest in one myself.
It
Get off the
sounds like,
bamboo.
yeah. Well, watch this space. There's some exciting things coming up in the next few weeks, which I can't reveal today, but
Oh, I feel like that's a bit of like you've left us on a cliffhanger now. We need to know what that is. Was there been anything around like listening to like your customers or any feedback that you had along the journey from customer experience that helped you pivot and make changes and continually keep on improving like the product or the experience for the customers on site?
100%. So I think this is like really like business 101, but like listening to your customers is at the very core of what makes Suri Suri. It's like that initial research that we did with thousands of people where we understood like, oh, they don't want this feature, but they would like a long battery, or hey, actually people want it to be quieter so that, it's just a nicer experience in the morning, not to have this really super loud electric noise when you're brushing your teeth. And so from the outset, that's been like a core strength of ours, trying to like do what people want rather than just add gimmicks for the sake of it. And I think as we move forwards, we have one of probably my favorite sort of tech features. We have an API between Trustpilot and Slack. So whenever a review comes in, it automatically goes to everyone in our company via Slack. And so I've had 3 since we've been on this call, and I'm seeing them. Obviously, it's nice when a positive one comes in, and with a 4.8 rating out of 11,500 reviews, often they are positive. But even within the positive ones, people will be like, "Oh, I love the feel. It gives me a really great clean. I haven't felt like this since I've been to the dentist. But I wish it would be, you'd release one in yellow, or actually, I find the charging case, we have a UV light in our case which kills 99.9% of bacteria, and you have to have it plugged in for it to work. But some people say like, oh, I thought it worked without it being plugged in, not realizing that there isn't a battery in. And so we gather all that information constantly and we put it back into our sort of product updates, which again, watch this space, because it's a very pertinent question given we've been listening since we launched our first product 3 years ago, and you'll see in the coming weeks that we have incorporated a lot of the feedback that we get via those reviews, but as well as Trustpilot, we also have a post-checkout survey. We use Fairing, which is a Shopify app, which I absolutely love. And at first we just asked one question, which was, how did you first hear about Suri? But now we've got like a series of different questions. And so we're constantly getting data back from our consumers around, what brush did you use before? Where did you hear about this? How long have you been thinking about it? What were your, what stopped you from buying it sooner? Is there anything et cetera, et cetera. And I think something like 42% of people do that survey on checkout.
Oh wow, that's
So it's
quite
like
high, isn't it?
meaningful. Yeah, it's really high. And, we get really rich data from it, and have done, every single day for several years now. And so we can sort of track trends and changes. It also helps with attribution. And so one thing that we're seeing is the rise of ChatGPT and ChatGPT and Claude, etc., as like a search function. And people, before it, be coming from Google, but I think in terms of fastest growing ways that people are discovering Suri, it's definitely through those.
Yeah, I bet that's quite a lot of work to like learn how to pivot to as well for like your team on how you do become searchable through like ChatGPT and all of like the AI functions. Like it's kind of like we're having to relearn a lot of what we knew from traditional e-commerce into the new way of thinking, isn't it?
Totally. I mean, just when you look at like the share of people who are finding us through it, you just see it's going to be such an important channel. Like the growth in it is enormous, and it will be vastly different in years to come.
And how do you treat like action and changes on the website? Obviously, you've got like your surveys, you've got like your reviews that come through around like product development. Is there anything that you're using on site to help inform changes that you're making to customer experience or conversion rate, AOV?
So you know what, I should have mentioned this before, but like we're really fortunate to have like a team of really passionate, committed, intelligent, hardworking people at Surrey. And so whether that's Gemma, who runs our Trustpilot, or whether it's other people on the team like Nick Horton, who's managing our fairing, what we do is we take all those insights, and then we have an incredible growth team who are constantly working at like different ways to iterate different elements of the page. And so I think Costia recently sort of made some proposed changes, which has seen an 8% increase in conversion. It was either Costia or Nick Horton, so apologies if I got that wrong. But 8% increase in conversion is significant, especially as we're coming up to Q4. And so we're constantly trialing things. Not everything works, obviously, but whether it's taking best practices from other websites or from sort of documents we read, or just testing, that's pretty much how we go about it. And we've got a laundry list of like a million things we want to do. So
Always
it's a
ever
constant
growing.
constant work. Yeah.
And talk to me a little bit about like the D2C and retail channel. Like, how did that fit into like the growth plans and the pictures that you wanted to of how you wanted to build SURI?
Sure. So I think once upon a time, everyone talked about D2C as a business model, and we've seen like the rise and collapse of companies who solely felt like D2C would be like the sort of like a differentiated business model that would enable them to succeed versus maybe like more traditional brands. I think from the beginning, Suri is very much a consumer customer focused business. Do you know what I mean? Like our focus really is on giving the best possible experience, the best possible clean, and the most sustainable product for our shopper and for our consumer. And so when you start thinking about it like that, we don't, we want to be where our shopper is, where our consumer is. We don't think about a channel, because we're not selling our toothbrushes to a channel, we're selling them to a person.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is that person, buying a toothbrush is just one very, very, very tiny little part of their lives. Whereas brushing their teeth every day, obviously, is a significant part of their lives. And so, that person, she shops in Boots, she maybe shops at Tesco, she, is on Instagram, she's on TikTok, she's, on her phone, maybe she's busy, she's, takes part in Prime Day. And so it's much more thinking about where she is and how she wants to go about her daily life, and make sure that we're appearing in the right places for her, so that we don't miss out on an opportunity. Because I mean, I was looking at the stats in America, but 63% of all electric toothbrushes in America, and that's like $1.5 billion worth of toothbrushes a year, are bought in store. And so, I think it's like another 30 are bought on Amazon. But you know what I mean? You're talking about the
Starting to grow it.
majority,
Yeah.
the majority of electric toothbrushes are bought in the store. And so if you don't play there, you're sort of excluding yourself automatically from this massive part of the market.
And how did you find like getting into retail locations? Did you, have like a list of ones where you wanted to be, and that was like, it has, because it's got to align with like your brand and your values, I suppose, as well, and on where your product's placed, or what was the strategy behind that?
Sure. So great question. So there's two ways we thought about it. One is by looking at data. So we look at market share data. So in the UK, Boots roughly have a 35% market share of electric toothbrush sales. Amazon, I think, roughly have a 40, 35, maybe 40 share. And so between those two retailers, there's a 75% market share. Then I think Superdrug maybe have like 12. These numbers might be slightly off, but that's like broadly accurate. And then you then sort of like look at sort of retailer by, that like revenue size and share, because it takes a lot of work to work with a retailer. And so you want to understand, what's the potential size of prize. So on one hand, you sort of rank them by revenue, but then on the other hand, it's like by strategic value, and by, thinking about the different types of customers and the brand positioning, etc. Because, just because a retailer is not large doesn't mean that actually they don't have like an ideal customer, or, a great brand alignment. So I think a good example of that is we're in Planet Organic stores in London, which is this fantastic, organic store with lots of brands which are aligned to the kind of brands that our shopper buys. Obviously, I think maybe they've got less than 20 stores, but it's a really great opportunity to sort of show up in a place where our customers would expect us to see them. But I'm also excited to announce we've just gone into 493 boot stores. So, we were in 189 in our first year, and they've just increased it as of last week, to like almost all of their main stores selling electric toothbrushes. So we've really increased distribution there. So we'd like to take a two-tiered approach. It's like thinking about, places which are, strategically relevant. So in the US, we're in Goop, which is the Gwyneth Paltrow shop, and then we're also in Erewhon, which is like a very high end store, a bit like Planet Organic, but in LA, and it's in all the places where all the actors and actresses and um, various celebrities are. So the Kardashians recently posted about us on their Instagram channels, most likely because they'd seen us in their local Erewhon store in Calabasas.
And how did that impact with such a big influence, like using the product impact sales? Was there any kind of like knock-on effect from that?
So, truth be told, there wasn't a huge knock-on effect from their posts. We were part of like a post with like several other products. So I don't think it wasn't like them, brushing their teeth and just talking about how great the product was with a link to our website. Unfortunately, like that would have been nice. But just the fact that it's like in their consideration set, kind of shows the power of strategic retail.
Mm-hmm. And was there any like major challenges that you faced or roadblocks as you was trying to get into any of these retailers?
100%. I think I emailed Boots 18 times without a response. I mean, like, can you imagine how incredibly awkward that was? And like, and it's like,
Was it always
it,
just did you put just following up on the below or just wanted to check in?
uh, I think I even started different email threads, and I managed to get meetings with like three or four of the not our buyer but other people who knew the buyer and had really productive calls with them, and they're like, oh, I'll mention it to her, and it just kept trying, and it just nothing back, which was hard. But fortunately, actually, two things happened. One, I got a phone call from a guy called Rob Hennessy. If anyone's looking to get into retail, this guy he was a buyer at John Lewis for 25 years, knows a lot of people in the industry. He just phoned me up one day. I was like, hey, Mark, what two customers would you like to get into? And I said, well, in the UK, it'd be Boots, and the US would be Target. And he said, I'll get you calls with both of them in the next week. And I was like, okay. And then sure enough, a week later, like he'd managed to get through, and it turns out I'd been emailing the wrong buyer at Boots.
Oh no.
And so that's why she hadn't responded. And so, or they were she was transitioning out and there was a new buyer. So yeah, so we kind of got in. So I think that's obviously a challenge. And then aside from that, though, I think people like Boots are absolutely wonderful to work with. Like the team really buy into our mission and purpose, and they can see the feedback from their customers and our customers on on how much people are supporting the brand, and they see the results in sales, because ultimately getting into retail is like, it's almost not the easy part, but like anyone, you can get onto the shelf.
Mm.
It's not really a victory to get onto a shelf. The victory is to like sell through, a bit like raising money for your business. It's not really a sign of success. It just gives you the opportunity to then build something meaningful. I would say it's the same with retail. So getting on shelf, great, but then selling through is the name of the game.
And did you find like once you got into one, it kind of opened out the doors for other locations?
Yes and no. I think so. Another thing we did was we went into Selfridges through a company called Smartech, and that was our very first retailer. So we were able to say we're in Selfridges, and Smartech is a concession within Selfridges, so it's like actually a really great way to get that first door. And I think us being able to say we're in Selfridges, certainly piqued the interest of others.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do think there is like a little bit of an impact when you're in other retailers. It just kind of like eases that that introduction.
And what would you tell someone who's trying to like change or to shake up a category that's typically felt a bit stagnant or stale, for some years?
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
What would you say to like a founder or someone that's setting up a new business or creating a new product in a category where it's maybe felt a little bit stale or it's not shaken up in years?
I would say go for it. I mean, like, I think for me personally, like the best way of learning is by doing. You know what I mean? Like there's like you can overthink a lot of stuff, but like there is just an element of like you just need to do it, and like you're going to learn as you're doing it. Um, but yeah, in terms of broad advice, I would say actually I it's this is a bit of advice that like I read when I was younger, and it's really, I don't know, like sometimes like advice really like penetrates your soul and like sticks with you, and you think about it nonstop, and sometimes it just rolls off your back and you don't kind of get it.
Mm.
But I also saw Stephen Bartlett. There's Asian investor guy this morning, and Stephen was asking him like, what's your one bit of advice? And this is the same bit of advice that I believe is like the most important, which is you got to like, if you find ways to minimize your downside, minimize your risk whilst maximizing your upside, like it's like in a casino, like making your odds of winning better. So, I always look to find ways to minimize my risk. So that could look like, um, setting up your business while you're still in a job where you're earning money, right? So you got limited financial downside, but then if your business takes off, it can go really well. Or, it could be negotiating a contract with an agency. I'm not suggesting that your agency would do this, but when we started doing PR, we had no money for PR, like zero money. And this really great agency came to us, and they said, look, we will do it on a no win, no fee basis. Actually, I think I suggested that, and they were like, not sure. But we said, look, we really think we're going to get a lot of coverage. If you get us anything above this, we will pay X and this X and this X. And we put a cap on it because we knew, like, say if they got 100 articles and we said we'd give them £1,000 per article, we wouldn't have £100,000. So we said, like, we'll cap it at a few £1,000s because that's our maximum budget. And by doing so, we had this massive upside potential. We had limited downside, and if they got nothing, we'd spend nothing. And so it was like this perfect agreement where if they didn't get anything, we wouldn't lose anything, and if they got loads, we would benefit. But it was a way for them to show what they could do. And so sure enough, they ended up getting like 20 articles, which on this retainer basis would have cost us whatever, £40,000 or something, but they'd agreed a cap of £4,000 or £3,000. And so they proved like, look, we can do it. And then we moved from there into a relationship. And so it was a good example of like, minimizing downside whilst maximizing upside.
And it paid off as well. That's the main
Yeah.
thing. And just to kind of like wrap things up, like what's next for you guys? Like what's on? I know you kind of mentioned or hinted at you've got some like big new products coming up. Is there any other ideas that you're working on, or anything else we can expect to see from the brand?
Yeah, so we recently launched toothpaste, which is going really, really well. So it's a nanohydroxyapatite, which is a technology developed by NASA originally for astronauts, which is really exciting to bring that to UK. It's one of the fastest growing segments in the US. If you just look on Google Trends, it's just this absolutely booming category. So it's cool to be able to offer our consumers and shoppers, toothpaste to go along with their toothbrushes. But yeah, watch your space for other innovation. We have lots of plans.
Exciting. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and it's been great to hear about your journey.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And if anyone ever has any questions, just drop us a line at hello@trysuri.com. Or, obviously we're at Discover Suri on Instagram. And yeah, I'm always happy to help. So thank you very much for having me on. Love D2C Live, and glad to be part of it.
Thank you.